Hey guys, welcome to the latest episode of the SaaS Sessions podcast. Today we have Kausambi Manjita on the show, or we can call you Kaus. Is that right?
Yep, that's
Yeah,
fine.
awesome. So Kaus is the founder and CEO of Kubric. Kubric is an AI-driven automation tool for designers and marketers. So hey Kaus, such a pleasure to have you in the show.
I'm so excited to finally again see you and hopefully have a long and exciting chat with you.
Yeah, for sure. So, like, I gave a very short intro, like, just one line on you and, what Kubrick is. But can you tell us more about yourself? I mean, like, we have been talking about you and, what you have been doing for the past few months now.
Yep.
But, really excited to do this. And can you tell us more about, like, you, how did you start a journey and how did you land into Kubrick? And then we can talk more on Kubrick a little bit.
All right. I think maybe we've spoken about it before, but for me, whose cause? If someone asks me whose
Yeah,
cause,
who's
and
course? Yeah.
whose cause? I think the first thing that comes to my mind is that there is this deep love for technology, and it has manifested way before in this obsession with like science fiction novels. I remember reading Isaac Asimov when I think my dad introduced me to his books, and I picked up the Foundation series maybe in my seventh or eighth standard, and I literally,
Mhm,
ate them up, right?
mhm.
And then, of course, Arthur C. Clarke and the Dune series and all of that. And on the other hand, there's this crazy excitement about content. And that came from my mother. She's a writer, and she comes from a long line of writers and artists, and a very artistic and creative family from the
Mhm,
east of India, and whose cause is exactly that. She's a mix of
mhm.
both. So
Yeah.
there is so
Like
there's an obsession.
scientifically, yes.
Scientifically, yes. Also, I think emotionally and spiritually,
Yeah.
because there is this obsession with the what is that what's happening out there.
Mhm,
How can crazy science fictionish technology improvements make great crazy impacts in everyday person's life?
mhm.
And on the other hand, I love content, and I mean the reason we connected and we
Yeah.
chatted was because of content in a way.
Content, yeah.
So just like you have a deep love for content, fiddled with writing, fiddled with creating videos, fiddled with creating my own blogs. You know about the YouTube channel, so there's
Yeah.
been all of that. But in the end, I think empowering content creators in some form or the other with technology is where I have found my sweet spot, and I just enjoy that a lot. And that's literally cost, whether I'm working
Mhm.
in within a company, my own company, or I'm doing some personal project. I realized that everything that I have always done has been exactly that. How do I use
Nice.
technology and do something about content?
Yeah, that's a really great mix of two different things, coming together and two different contrasting things. So really
Yeah.
great. But so you've worked at IBM, you've worked at, and then you started on your own.
Yep.
So like, why start on your own? Like you would have had a great job in a great position, doing great stuff. But like, what kind of motivation you had, or what was the inflection point or the turning point where you
Yeah.
decided, I should do something of my own?
I've been a product manager. Unfortunately, I never really was in a space where I actually worked on creating great content. To be honest, I have been a product manager in some way, creating apps and creating solutions. But and of course, when you launch apps and solutions, you realize, my God, it has so much content around it too, right?
Yeah.
Everything from label copies to your
Mhm.
website and whatever else that goes out there, including feature releases and whatnot. But no, I think for me there was always this like niggling, what do I really want to do in life?
Mhm. Mhm.
And so I started out in IBM Labs like a long while back.
Yeah.
Now it's like a decade and a half. So it's close to 15 years of work.
Mhm.
And when I started out, I think I did not understand whether I could do better or I could create more impact as a
Mhm.
developer,
Mhm.
or can I create more impact, as an analyst? Can I
Mhm.
create more impact
Yeah.
as a product manager? No clue.
Mhm.
Fresh out of college, joined actually a startup
Uh-huh.
founded by Indians called Yantra Technologies, which was like one
Mhm.
of the oldest product, I would say, solutions coming out of Indian
India.
founders.
Mhm.
Before that, there's been a lot of like the Infosys and the Wipros, so
Yeah.
a lot of services led global names. but I would say product-led global names in my head, at least. Yantra was one of the few early, teams out there,
Mm-hmm.
and I joined them, and so the love of products and creating, definitely
Yeah.
the eye for, how does a user think, how does a user feel. They were building massive solutions for OMS and WMS and TMS and all of those, boring supply chain stuff in a way, right? But there was this obsession with, honestly, the user. Yeah,
Building
absolutely.
something.
Sorry?
Building something, basically.
Building something, and over there I saw the obsession, the founders and the teams, and then it was a large team by the time I had joined. So all of the seniors, we were
Mm-hmm.
fresh out of college, right? It was
Yeah.
just boot camp kids,
Mm-hmm.
but seeing them obsessed with, hey, like FedEx is using, I see this failure in the logs, why is that happening, like that obsession, right? Or teams like FedEx and Walmart and DHL were using the products, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then on the other hand, like Walmart is doing this and one of their users called and said this, why? So these are enterprise grade products, these are teams that are completely supply chain, but there was an obsession in the team with this focus on really want to care, they really cared about what the user was
Yeah.
thinking and feeling. So I think I saw that and I really liked it. And so initially I joined in the technology team, but was like really keen to sort of like move a little bit towards
Yeah.
that obsession. And what I understood as a young kid was that, hey, like if I'm in the product team, then I can obsess over it more. If I'm in the technology team, then I solve that. But if I'm in the product team, I can worry about that, problem that the user is facing. So from there, I sort of shifted towards the product org, and then I was in Indian School of Business.
Mm-hmm.
There, actually, I really enjoyed a lot, and I met a lot of cool, people who eventually went on to build great teams. Also, for example, one of the co-founders of Postman, Ankit, was my classmate, right?
Oh,
So
nice.
you've seen all of that. You did see an obsession with, again, great products, building great
Mm-hmm.
products in some
Yeah.
way. So I think that fired up, like I always knew I want to do something different,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't know what different means. So for me the quest was like, maybe product is that thing, maybe just
Yeah.
being a product manager is what is the different thing. So as I started working on Paytm, worked in Paytm wallet, worked in pay with Paytm. In fact, like I remember
Mm-hmm.
even researching PayPal and how they do versus how we should do. So it was very
Mm-hmm.
exciting times for me in terms of learning. But as I kept doing it, and then I was in Mintra and I built out the content platform, even there, I think there was this always like, what more?
Mm-hmm.
Something is missing.
Yeah.
And I remember I had met my co-founder by then at Mintra, and I remember having this conversation. He had a startup of his own, a couple of startups, and one of the latest startup had actually been acquired by the Flipkart group. So he had just joined, and I had
Mintra.
just
Yeah.
joined. So it was interesting. I had never worked so closely with someone who had just exited, like
Exited.
after 7, 8 years of hard work and
Oh,
stuff
nice.
like that.
Uh-huh.
So I think that it was, for me, that was curiosity. Why did you do it? Was so much, he would say, oh, it was painful, all of that, but I would repeat it, right?
Yeah.
It's like, what is this?
Yeah.
Why? And you hear it. You hear a
Yeah.
lot of other people say that. And that was very intriguing for me. And I think around 2016 was when so many conversations, meeting more people by then.
Right.
And I think I've started like, you usually in jobs you do that, right? Every 2 to 3 years, you are like, okay, what's next? What
What's
else?
next? Yeah.
Is there something else out there? And I
Uh-huh.
think I was interviewing with a bunch of teams, and suddenly it just came that, you know what, like it's now or never. If I'm very, very intrigued by this
Mm-hmm.
hard work, but they are enjoying it. How? Like it's crazy hard work, but they say,
Yeah.
everybody says, even if whether they fail or they succeed, they say they
Right.
would repeat it,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly. Huh.
And so for me, that was like, is that the gap that I'm looking at, right?
Yeah.
And of course, around that time at work, we had started noticing how visual content was
Mm-hmm.
creation is like really hard still, but how users, because of young millennials and Gen Zs like you, how you just live with visual content, right? So as a
Mm-hmm.
brand, even in Mintra, we saw how people have to create good videos, have to create good gifs,
Mm-hmm.
good visual content. So that was that interesting problem that, oh wow, content creation is very important for everybody,
Mm-hmm.
but everybody uses very different ways to solve that
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah.
And as a larger brand, you want to be with it, with the trends, right?
Right.
So in spite of that, all you have is like just put more and more people in the picture. So how do you solve, like, is there a way
Yeah.
to use technology to solve that? But that problem was very exciting. In some way you started solving it at Mintra. But that problem was so exciting. And then on the other side,
Yeah.
there was this question that is there something to do beyond being an employee, I
Mhm.
think. And yeah, I it's been really hard 3 to 4 years. I
Uh-huh.
had another startup, that
Yeah,
the
story.
podcast Storio, and we closed it, and then we started working on Kubric. But I guess I'm sounding old if I say I would repeat
Yeah.
it.
Nice. But so basically you're like, it was started for you, like the startup journey or the entrepreneurial journey that started
Mhm.
for you was because of the underlying basic question that you have that, hey, you're an employee working at some org and then like what's next? I'm getting good challenges and I'm getting good opportunities, but I'm not, you know, trying to answer that one question which is there in your mind, like, what can you do or what's next or, how long should I keep doing this kind of job, right? I need to solve like a bigger problem which is there, or I need to pick like one problem which I've seen
No, I
and
think it was not a bigger problem. I think it
uh-huh.
was like I see these problems, they're so exciting for me. How do I solve this problem? Which
Okay.
company is solving this
Yeah.
problem so that I can join there? And then you are like, wait, why don't I do it?
Yeah. So, does Kubrick have a competitor? Because let's say you saw this problem, right? And you mentioned that you were looking out if any company is solving this problem or not, and then you sort of took a step back and decide, like, if even if someone is, why
Hmm.
shouldn't I solve this problem too with my own product? So,
Yeah.
but so does Kubrick have any competitor?
Of course, I mean, like
Uh,
content creation itself is a large space. So there are different
yeah,
different competitors in different parts of the content
right.
creation problem. I think it was more that, hey, like, for example, at that point, and also
Uh-huh.
at that point, as a broad space, yes,
Hmm.
content creation. But content creation is such a wide term, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So
Same.
there is like and even if you narrow it down, for me, I thought that was narrow.
Right.
Was visual content. No, man,
Yeah.
that is like large. What do
Still
you mean
huge,
visual
yeah.
content? For who? For who's the audience of that visual content? Is it animated? Is it interactive? Is it,
Hmm.
shoppable, non-shoppable? So many questions there. And that each of that itself is one entire domain, right? Like, is it influencer created content? Is it UGC
Exactly.
content, right? Is
Yeah.
it brand content? I mean, there's just a content itself, just even if you take only visual content, I think has at least like 20, 30 different parts to it that you can
Yeah.
solve. But for
Yeah.
me at that point, I thought like, hey, visual content is a broader space.
Right.
And I looked around, and globally, in some really big way, Netflix was solving a lot of interesting ways. Very,
Yeah.
like, you wouldn't think of Netflix as a content technology company, because they have a lot of great tech that's
Uh-huh.
more focused towards their own problems. But the
Hmm.
problems were there, right? Like, for example, how do they surface the best cover art for each of
Hmm.
their videos, which
Make.
is
Uh-huh.
personalized, right?
Hmm.
When Sunil logs in, he should see cover art for the same show, or the snippet or a trailer of this show that is exciting for Sunil.
Yeah.
But when Kos logs in, can she see a trailer of the same show which is exciting for her, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So these were problems that they were solving. The problems were exciting, just that the
Hmm.
direction of solving the problem was for Netflix, right?
Got it.
And then you look outside, and there were a lot of video, creation tools around that. Animoto, Magisto, it's
Hmm.
Watch It, and a bunch of other teams trying to do that. Canva was just, I think this was 2015, so Canva was
Hmm.
just like starting
Yeah.
to become important. Now, it was not even important, actually. It was just
Right.
starting, I think, to be in the radar for people who
Hmm.
were content hogs, right? So there were all of these, right?
Hmm.
The interesting thing was that for me, when I'm looking at all of that, and at that point I'm in Mintra in India, right? So you're like, ah, even if I want to solve it with these teams, how do I find a way there?
Exactly, yeah. So basically, like building a product where not only one team can utilize, but sort of multiple teams can utilize in multiple different ways also, right? Like each taking the same problem, but taking a different approach in solving the problem. And you building this product which is kind of enabling them to solve this problem. So really interesting point. So how did you start? So now you've built Kubrick and you've started, you've building the product. So how did you hire your first few people? Because hiring the first 10 people would be, you have to sell them the idea of the company, right? First, because they would be like your family, and they're not your employees, per se. It's a different kind of relationship that you have with your first few hires. So how did you solve this particular problem of hiring first and people for the team?
We were lucky, at least initially, we were working on, actually in Mintra. Just to step back a little, like to answer the hiring question, in Mintra, me and my co-founder were working together to create the content platform for Mintra internally itself, which eventually became like a brand engagement
Uh-huh.
platform.
Hmm.
Content and brands, like they just tied
Yeah.
together, right? So while doing that, like we had worked with a bunch of really cool smart people. Coincidentally, during the end of 2016, 2017, 2016 to 2017, a lot of, because Mintra had just exploded, and so a lot of exploded in a good way. And what happened is that a lot of the older, really cool team members were starting to like sort of, hey, we've worked five, 6 odd years over here, and what next, right? So there were a lot of like what next questions, I think. So when initially, as I mentioned, I stopped working at Mintra. We started the podcasting startup. We were at YC, Y Combinator for it, and went through all of that. And then we realized, okay, for that we didn't really hire anybody, full time. We more were working with like contract, freelance, friends, designer friends, like, hey, yeah, UI banado, those sort of stuff,
Yeah.
right? So that's literally how we did, or ex colleagues. But then we started Kubrick, and like the problem of, hey, we want to work on this entire content creation, making it easy and making it AI led in some way. When we started that, this was like 2017, end of the year sort of a thing. And we started thinking on the idea, and we were actually bouncing it off with some of the colleagues that we have worked who were great, who we really enjoyed working with. And my co-founder was one of the head architects at Mintra. He was in fact leading storefront, the architect
Hmm.
team, right? So for him, he had literally worked with the some of the good engineers who had left Mintra by then.
Oh.
So our first, I would say, 5 of us were all are actually, yeah, they're all ex Mintra. So that's how that happened. So it
Hmm.
was a lot of, to answer your question on like how did you give them a glimpse of the vision and all of that,
Right.
right? I
Hmm.
think it was this whole brainstorming and ideation that happened from very early on.
Right.
When I started thinking about it, it was a lot of like, hey, whiteboarding, this is what we are thinking, this is how we are thinking of solving. So what brought it actually had already brought us together was we are all in some way, we love solving problems. So whiteboard and a marker, and all, 4 or 5 of us would be very excited and happy people, right?
Nice.
Because we'll be like, okay, this is a problem, and we're all like, how do we
Yeah.
solve it architecturally, growth wise, whatever,
Uh-huh.
right? So it was always very exciting. And that's how I think the first 5, 6, 10 was just always one problem after another, having
Right.
conversations, somebody introduced to someone, solving. And we're like, hey, like that person, it's himself or herself would say, hey, I want to join the team. Or we would say, hey, why don't you join the team? And we can continue working on this problem, right?
So,
So that's how it was.
yeah.
So for me, I feel like the first few, you're very right. It's very important to get that, in a way, at least have a few of those right, if not
Right.
all. At least for me, I don't think we've got every hire that we've made has been the perfect hire for the problem we are solving, for the context
Mm-hmm.
at this time,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
Sometimes some people we hired too early, sometimes maybe too late, sometimes not at the right scale, not the
Uh-huh.
right geo, many questions, right? But what has always worked, at least till now, which is close to 50
Uh-huh.
people, has been every time we have had people who share a passion for building good good solutions, good products that others don't just love to use in a superficial way, but actually that's a value to the other
Right.
user. I think it has worked out.
Nice.
We have done wrong things, we have taken wrong decisions, we have done wrong decisions in our product building also, but at least there is a north star that we want to build something that is of value, so that north
Right.
star has helped. Yeah.
Nice, nice. Talking about the bad decisions, right? So, in particularly hiring, you mentioned. So, how did you identify, or how did you get to a conclusion that, hey, this is like not a really good decision that they've joined. So again, they might be off place, too early, too late. So, how did you figure out that that this is a bad hire?
I would not say bad hire, but like the
Uh,
right person at the wrong
yeah,
time,
yeah,
or
something
sometimes
like
wrong
not
person.
not a bad hire for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or sometimes it's the wrong person itself, because maybe that person would never enjoy working in this problem, right? I think that what now the recipe is that if you are not excited by the content space, there's no point.
Yeah.
That's like table stakes.
That's
So if recently, in fact, there was a couple of young people who, one of our recent hires recommended, and she said that, hey, like, speak to them. They've been pinging me. They're very excited by the website. Just like you said, it looks really
yeah.
chic and all of that. And I spoke to them, and yes, they love automation. Yes,
Mhm.
they, wanted to solve AI ML problems and all of that, right? But when my honest question to them was, hey, this is an example of a problem that you will be solving day in and day out.
Yeah.
Do you want to solve this problem with me right now?
Yeah.
Or is it like, I'm not sure, I'll have to think about it? Or is it like, that's a horrible problem to solve, right? Scale are you on?
Yeah.
And think about it and it'll get back to me, right?
Uh-huh.
And now we are trying to preempt it even at that stage. Like, is the problem exciting for that person,
Yeah.
right? So if the problem is not exciting, by now that's the recipe. That if that's not exciting, no point moving it forward, right? But I think even like 6, 7, or maybe last year, our hiring pattern was a little different. At that point, we would, I think, realize it a little bit after working together on some project or something like that, right?
Makes sense.
So either the person gets to understand it and that they are not the right, or maybe the problem felt exciting, but when they actually did it, they're like, it's not, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So how important do you think it is, for anyone who's, working in your company to, share that same passion that you have about solving the problem?
Yeah, I think it's more like everybody cannot be a founder or the founding team, right?
Uh-huh.
So that is the reality, and it shouldn't be also, because you can't. That's not some a very sustainable energy for many people. But I think people have to be passionate about the same fundamental philosophy.
Uh-huh.
It doesn't have to be passionate about just this,
Right.
right? Like,
Exactly.
for example, for us, it's a team of makers. So you have to have a maker mentality, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. We have had people who possibly love to, like, for example, one of our engineering, dev team, she really does great art, and she has an Instagram channel where she's, doing great art, she's selling it, but she's making something. So she
Right.
respects that ethics of a maker, right?
Right. Exactly.
And the passion that it takes to build something.
Right.
On the other hand, another team member, he's like, I think during COVID, realized his love for trying out different vegan and vegetarian recipes, and he's actually
Mm-hmm.
like really doing that every day, right? So I think even that is great, because it's just
Mm-hmm.
that you are passionate about building something, creating something.
Something, yeah, not not
Yeah.
might be sharing the same passion, but might be different, but interested in solving the problem also. And
Exactly. So
yeah,
there is always an interested in, basically, that that person cares about their output. You know that that person,
yeah,
cares about, how others perceive their output, right? Or
right.
how others feel about their output. You know that that person, you can have a great conversation with them about something, and they
Mm-hmm.
are like, they are not just whiling away life. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, they're not. They're
Yeah,
like really, they have a direction. And
right.
that is what I think is important. It's not necessary for everybody to be like burning 200% or 10%. All of that don't matter. I think
Uh-huh.
it's more like whether the fundamental philosophy of that entire unit is at least in the same direction, that they all
Makes
love
sense.
creating good stuff. That's it.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So it seemed to me like, you have a really great culture, for the company, right? Culture inside the company as well. So how did you build up this kind of culture?
I mean, I'll answer the second question of how do you define the culture at Kubrick? I think it's a culture of makers. I've even written a blog about it.
Uh-huh.
It is not the maker. Maker is being a maker is very important,
Mhm.
and why maker culture really helps. Teams bond, especially
Mhm.
remote, right? What you don't have the context of your day to day life as
Right,
exactly the same, right?
right.
And you are not having your water cooler moments or having coffee and all of that, right?
Exactly, yeah.
And I think this year our realization that is how again culture is not a one trick pony. It's not that like this is the culture and you hand it over to the
Hmm.
team. I realized that it's like the team also helps you realize what your culture is,
Totally.
and people who are in the team who love it and people who don't love it both help you realize that it's equally important. So all are hiring people who did not enjoy working with us, right, and who
Uh-huh.
was left, they have made us realize that oh, they did not like because of these reasons, but we are good. Even if they don't like it because of these reasons, that is who we are as a team. We are a very passionate team. We love
Totally.
creating stuff. But
Uh-huh.
if someone doesn't, that's fine, right? Like some
Yeah.
people enjoy creating things, right? They might
Hmm.
enjoy more consuming or other things, and it's okay. So our decision, our realization, I think as a unit was that we prefer the creating part. We don't enjoy the consuming part as much, right?
Right,
So we're
right,
very very heavy creators. So
yeah,
that's a choice. So
right.
it helps, even a person who's leaving the team actually helps you, like morph and understand your
Mm.
own culture better
Yeah,
in a way.
totally.
I think over this last 2.5 to 3 years now, going to be 3 years, I think the realization has been that with every person who's stayed, who's every person who's left, with every person we had asked to leave, or every person we wanted to not leave, is that together we are a team of makers and we
Yeah.
love creating great stuff, and so it just works that way.
Hmm.
And now the second part, how do you maintain that culture, right? I
Yeah.
think at one point, Sunil, honestly, if you'd asked me like last year, I would say culture is my problem.
Yeah.
And if I
Uh,
I would have to make and maintain like the best culture in the team, right, and take a
uh-huh.
lot of pressure about it and stress about it, right?
Hmm.
I think this year I have evolved and I have learned that it's equally, every individual's, actually every individual in the team, each of us actually is aggregating to create that unit. So
Hmm.
every drop is important.
Hmm.
So it's not just I can nurture and I can facilitate and I can help, but all of us have to sort of, be together, and and all of us together is exactly that culture, right?
Totally.
So I think that's the best way to nurture it, like distribute it out, like everybody, we have people who are like, hey, let's do a book club reading, right? We have people
Uh-huh.
who are like, hey, let's do antakshari because we love that, right? Yeah,
Hmm.
I create food and I want to share it every weekend, recipe and the picture of
Right.
what I, right? So it's everybody together actually is important, and so helping them understand that it's great. Like you do this, don't be shy, just share it out, and you will find three other people in this 50-member team who will, or
Who
maybe
will?
two others,
Yeah. Yeah. You never know.
who will just connect with you on that. So
Hmm.
as a, I guess as a, or like mother hen, your job is to facilitate those
Yeah.
connections, make people comfortable enough that like it's okay to feel that you are a little shy or you feel lonely, but it's also absolutely fine to put your word out and find that other connects, right?
Right.
I'm with you towards while you do that,
Hmm.
but not taking the onus that hey, like a mandate every Friday 6 o'clock, let's all
Yeah.
get into coffee call because we have to, like nahi,
Yeah. Yeah.
that, yeah,
Makes sense. So,
yeah.
so I was reading this interesting book by Ben Horowitz, right? Like,
Mm.
what you do is who you are, and
Yeah,
it's based on culture, right? Creating how organizations can create cultures. So in this book, like, he tells a story of like mafia leaders, basically, on how do they maintain their culture.
yeah.
So, so one point that really like which I think is interesting is, let's say if you are a mafia leader and someone in your group or someone in your gang you know does a very big mistake, right? So now if you let them go as a leader of the mafia, if you let them go, then that sets a different kind of example. But if you shot them dead because of that particular mistake,
Yeah.
that kind of leads to a different example. So like taking that kind of analogy and bringing it to like organizations, like obviously you cannot shoot someone in an org. Yeah, but let's say if someone makes a mistake, right? So like how do you think, like you would deal as a leader of your gang or your group, right? Like there's either two options, right? You punish them, that kind of sets a different example, or you let them go, but that kind of set another example in people's mind that hey, if I make a mistake, I'm let go, right, of that mistake. So like how do you deal
Yeah.
in this kind of situation?
Actually, I love that part, and I think when I was reading that book, one of the things that stood out is how like each mafia gang is almost a cult, right? Like,
Yeah.
and because they're a cult, they're able to maintain.
Yeah, yeah.
And initially, I remember when we started out and we started like expanding the team, and I used to tell my co-founder and our early founding members that, hey, like we are like a tribe, like we are like a cult, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And it started feeling weird. But so this is again, I think I'm also learning as I go. One of the things I would never anyway do is punish someone for
Uh-huh.
mistakes. I think my problem was, or rather my evolution has been
Mm-hmm.
that I used to be too forgiving of mistakes, and
Mm-hmm.
in the sense I would literally take the onus of fixing like that person and that person's pushing helping that person or pushing that person to
Mm-hmm.
overcome that mistake a
Yeah.
bit too much only on me, right?
Right.
And that also is not healthy, by the way. Like on one
Yeah.
extreme, that you are like screaming, shouting, and you're firing, right? On the other side, you are like, oh, maybe I made a mistake in coaching that person. That is also not very healthy to
Mm-hmm.
constantly feel like I made a mistake in coaching, I made a mistake in coaching, right?
Yeah.
So I think that healthy balance that I have, that you are a human being. At least I,
Yeah.
I definitely am a very, very I
Yeah.
have a lot of fallacies. I have a lot of, I make a lot of mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just like, I'm the most, human you would ever meet in your life. I think. So my learning has been that it's because the way I am
Mm-hmm.
as a very genuine, real person, and I if something goes wrong, if it has a large impact, I feel stressed about it. And
Yeah.
I acknowledge that. I think acknowledging that really helps me and helps
Mm-hmm.
the other person first. Right? Hey, I am stressed. And if I'm
Right.
reacting, it's simply because I'm stressed. Right?
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with us. It has nothing to do with that your work or my work or our, personalities or our, qualifications, all of
Mm-hmm.
that stuff, right? Nothing.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Something really messy happened, it is natural for both of us to stress about it. So first, let's
Totally.
acknowledge that. Right? Like
Yeah.
we made a mess. You made a mess. I realized it right now. I'm stressed that I did not realize it.
Yeah.
You're feeling guilty because you think you have made a mess. Let's acknowledge it, and like now that our emotions are on the table,
Yeah.
now let's work towards how do we fix the problem, right? I
Mm-hmm.
think that clarity has really helped me, at least in recent, last 1 year or so, is to understand that, like, and be able to demarcate and even have that honest conversation with the
Mm-hmm.
other person on the other side, that hey, like, I'm really angry right now, but that's okay.
Yeah.
How do we solve this?
Yeah.
Right? Right?
Forget
And
that
that other
mistake
person
happened.
being,
Let's try
that's it.
fixing the problem. Yeah.
And that also helps very well, because your anger or your stress or your guilt, you are diverting into a constructive output.
Yeah. Yeah.
That also helps you overcome that, emotion, right? And that really helps. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that also tightens the bond between people,
Yeah.
because you are so vulnerable and honest with each other,
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
right? And in your lowest point, in a way, like, I have
Right.
made a mistake, it's out there, and now both of
Yeah.
you realize it, and you're like, it's okay. ठीक
Yeah.
है, but
Yeah.
it's not, neither is it कि कोई बात नहीं, don't worry, it's all fine. It's not, no, neither
It's not,
that.
yeah. So
Yeah,
it's somewhere in the middle, like
yeah,
neither ends. Like you
yeah,
won't fire them, you won't or shoot them, whatever,
yeah.
and you won't let them go as well, let them get away with it, right? So it's
I
kind of
think,
in the
I
middle.
think it's somewhere in the middle. It's also, I think, being okay with whichever the situation demands you to be.
Mhm, mhm,
Sometimes some situations, some things might be really, like, it might be repeated at many times. Maybe it's the same mistake repeated over 2 years, right?
mhm.
And there's no growth in not letting that mistake happen, right? At that point, being honest enough to have that conversation, that hey, like,
Right.
this is what is wrong,
Totally.
right? Why are you unable
Yeah.
to move beyond, you know?
the point.
and
Yeah.
it's okay to even acknowledge that maybe that situation demands you to do that, right? That, hey, I have given you and both of us as many chances,
Yeah.
and now it's like important for us both to acknowledge that maybe we should not give as many chances to this same mistake happening
Totally.
again and again, right? On
Totally.
the other hand, there are situations that demand you to be completely, supportive, then you are supportive, right? Because you're like, we never knew something like this could
This
happen. We
happened.
never,
Yeah.
or this is the first time you're doing this, all of that, right?
Yeah.
So that's absolutely fine. And sometimes it's okay to be in the middle also, where you are like, I'm so
Yeah.
angry, but it's okay. Let's solve the problem, right?
Yeah.
So that's
Focus
also
on
okay. So I think,
solving. Mhm.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So I think my answer is more like
It
mostly in
depends
the
on the
middle,
mistake.
but if the situation demands,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
Largely
The,
depends on the
yeah,
mistake, basically. Yeah. No, and I
yeah,
think Ben also explains it very neatly in the book. And I mean, there are like a lot of examples and a lot of, insights that
exactly.
he shared. I mean, I would recommend that book to, like, all the founders and, anyone who's kind of building their culture or, cult, basically.
Yep.
Really great read. So, yeah, I think we can go on and on talking about a lot of different points. I think we have done that in like a few different calls, but
I remember our last conversation. I think it was like a couple of hours.
yeah,
It's supposed to be a 5 minutes
yeah,
conversation.
yeah. I think okay, but for the show, right? Yeah, let's move on to the last section of the show, which is like lightning round. So I have like three questions for you. So first one, like, what do you know about your work now that you wish you would have known when you first started?
That when it comes to making a great product, it's not that great product managers or great engineers only make great products. I think because you make a great product, you become a great product manager, a great
Yeah,
engineer.
totally.
And I think it's a line that many people, even many I would say experienced people, sometimes swap, and like, oh, that person's worked in a great company, must be a great product guy, right? Like
Yeah,
usually we've seen, right? Like
yeah,
certain names in the industry, and you're like, okay, those must be great product guys, right? Not necessary, because
yeah,
that the process is what makes you good. The process is purely that constant eye on how is that each individual user feeling. It
totally.
doesn't matter whether you're doing enterprise or consumer SaaS or whatever, and you have a lot of data points, you have limited data points, but not getting stuck in the data points, but actually understanding the human being behind that data point, and
Yeah.
keeping an eye on making that human being's life better.
Hmm.
And that focus on that process is what makes you a great founder, product manager,
Totally.
engineer, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I think that is, I wish I had known it, or I had, maybe at some level all of us know it and you acknowledge it, but actually understanding that,
Yeah, yeah.
actually understanding it like deeply, and seeing how that really impacts, changes the way you and your team, you can facilitate your team to work. I think I wish I had known it 2 years back, but maybe if I hadn't gone through this journey, I wouldn't have known it. So
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think the journey teaches you a lot as well. So, yeah, second one. So, what did your biggest professional failure teach you?
okay, what did my biggest professional failure teach me? To focus. It's good to say no, and the more you say no, I mean, that's textbook. I would say product guys, right? Like that one of the most important things as a product guy is to say no, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Theoretically great, in action within a team, great. You can still figure that out. But I think starting out as a founder, because you don't have any other textbook or playbook to look at, the ability to say no and say more no's than you say yes, that's what it's taught me.
yeah. I think there's a great quote also. I don't know who said this, but it's something on the lines of like, focusing is all about saying no to like 100
Yeah,
different things and just saying yes to like one thing or something like that.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so it makes sense. And then the last one, like, what is the number one thing that has helped you shorten your learning curve?
I think for it's different for different people.
Yeah.
For me, it's meeting more and more people globally and having really deep connections and
Yeah.
awesome with them.
Yeah.
That shortens my learning curve, because I learn as I bounce ideas, I
Yeah.
learn as I talk to, and also not being tied to who I'm speaking to.
Uh-huh.
Basically, I don't care about that person's credentials or
Hmm.
experience levels or age or anything of that sort. Sorry, Slack. Right. So not caring about that person's credential or age or anything of that sort, but actually just the fact that every person I meet and have a conversation with, I learn something, right?
Right.
That really shortens my learning curve. It's different for
Right.
different
Yeah,
people.
yeah. I mean, this is the same for me as well. I mean, I'm
Yeah,
speaking to a lot of. I mean, I use this show to connect with like many people and
exactly.
learn from them, connect with them,
Yeah.
and it definitely helps. So it's validated.
Good to know it's
Yeah,
validated.
yeah. It's
I have at least one more person in this
uh,
world who vouches for it. So
yeah. So thanks a lot, Kos, for coming up on the show, doing this, spending a lot of time with me off the record, on the record as well, discussing about a lot of things. I mean, like we talked a broad spectrum of things, I would say. So really great we could do this. I'm really happy we got a chance to connect and record this.
yeah, and I'm always so
Yeah.
happy to talk to you. There is so much of same love for content in some way or the other, content
Yeah.
and community actually.
Yeah.
So it, and though years apart, like it's so nice to connect with someone at the same level on at least two to three things. So
Yeah.
really happy to be able to chat with you, and I hope we get a chance to do it again.